Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Hey guys, and welcome to GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Cynthia, and happy Monday, everyone. I hope you all are having a very strong start to your week and setting new intentions to fulfill, and hopefully you stick to them. I have had a pretty good day so far. I mean, I don't see why I would have a bad day. You know, I woke up healthy, breathing, blessed, went to work, taught a few classes, a few morning classes, came home, took a quick 20-minute nap, and then now I'm here recording an episode. So pretty typical Monday for me over here. Nothing too exciting. However, yesterday, August 2nd on Sunday, something exciting did happen in my family. My dad, it was his birthday, and it was his 50th birthday. He turned the big 50. That is actually insane that he turned 50. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about, because I think oftentimes as, you know, children of our parents, you know, as we age, we tend to forget that our parents age as well. And I think that's one of the hardest things about growing up, is that, yes, you are growing and becoming wiser and maturing and growing into your truest, highest self. But then I look at my parents and I'm seeing, you know, how they're aging, not really terribly, but you know, I do start to see kind of energy levels depleted a little bit, and you know, wrinkles and all of that natural aging process, which again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just really weird for me to see as their child. Does that make sense? Do anyone with parents out there, do you guys understand what I'm saying? We forget how they age as well, which sucks. I wish it wasn't like that, but it is what it is. So yeah, the big 50, we did go out to eat at a restaurant. And mind you, I am not the biggest fan of going out to eat at any restaurant right now due to, we're in a whole pandemic, and I just get really anxious, you know, touching silverware from the restaurant, although I'm sure they wash it and clean it and whatnot. I don't know. It's still just you never know how many hands have touched silverware before it lands on your table. But it was a special occasion, and we really didn't have anything else planned, and all my dad really wanted to do is go eat at Texas Roadhouse. So that's exactly what we did. And it was so interesting because basically the entire restaurant got moved outside in the parking lot. So we literally paid and sat to eat under a canopy on lawn chairs. I mean, I'm not complaining, you know, we are the ones who decided to go out to eat. But again, it was a special occasion. But yeah, it was just very interesting and comical to be there, because I'm oh my God, and it was packed, you guys. It wasn't you know, it was just us. It was packed. And we didn't go out to eat till Sunday, you know, yesterday around 4 p.m. And I was not expecting to see that many people eating at a restaurant, and that many people willing to go eat at a restaurant outside in the heat under a canopy on lawn chairs. This whole pandemic really has us eating and drinking margaritas in a parking lot. It's kind of funny. It really is like, oh my God, we are just comical at this point. But anyway, that is my weekend. And let's get into something really exciting today. I literally just found out about this method called the RNT method. Have any of you heard it? Yes? No? Okay. Well, we're going to dive into all about how to fix your big lifts fast with the RNT method. And when I talk about big lifts, I'm talking about your big compound movements, squats, deadlifts, chest press, etc. And this article, basically how this idea came up was from Dr. John Russin. And I think this is a really good article to talk about on today's episode, because the RNT method is really amazing during these tough times where a lot of gyms and fitness centers are staying closed and we are left with very minimal equipment, to work out with. So the RNT method basically is going to show us how you can progress and challenge your workouts with the RNT method with minimal equipment. So again, I think it's extremely useful right now during these times, and definitely stay tuned for everything that we have in store in today's episode. We're going to talk about the RNT method, which stands for Reactive Neuromuscular Training. We're going to dive into what exactly that is. We're going to talk about the RNT method in specific big lifts, such as the squat, bench press, deadlift, and much, much more. So definitely stick around, especially for all my fitness fanatics out there. You're definitely going to like this one. So the big compound lifts are some of the most technically advanced movements in the gym that need to be learned, mastered, and maintained over time to continue to progress while staying injury-free in the process, right? I'm sure if you've worked with many fitness coaches or just if you follow your favorite fitness influencer coach on Instagram, you oftentimes have heard about these big compound lifts, the main lifts that are really going to get you to the next level. And they're just overall amazing for your health, to be honest. But as every serious strength athlete knows, there are times in your lifting career when your big lifts plateau and pain starts to rear its ugly head, seemingly out of nowhere. This was literally me this morning. Mondays are usually leg day for me. I love to start my week with a good leg day just to again start my week off on a strong note. But I noticed during my lift today that my low back was tweaking a lot. Not even excruciating pain, but it was just I can tell it was a little uncomfortable. And right now, as I'm sitting recording this episode, I can tell that I'm a little comfortable in my low back, and I think it's just really sore. And I think it's also during the last 8 weeks or so, I have been putting a lot of tension, a lot of stress on my body, but specifically on my back. I hit a major PR, which stands for personal record, last week in my sumo deadlift. I lifted 3 reps of 185 pounds. Now, I know this may not seem like a ton for some of you strength athletes out there who've been doing the damn thing forever, but for me, 5'2", 123 pounds over here, and I've never hit that ever in my life. And I think that's why my back is sore. And this happened on Saturday, by the way, and it's Monday today. So it's only been a couple days since I hit that PR, and I'm very proud of myself. I feel like a total bad A, if you know what I'm saying. I can't cuss on the episode, you guys, so I have to keep it PG. Anyway, and deadlifts, they put a lot of stress on your back, your low back. And I think maybe that's why my low back is feeling it today. Again, nothing really excruciating, but as I said, everyone in, their lifting careers, pain starts to kind of rear its ugly head in. And for me, today was a day. So I had to keep it really easy on my lifts today. I had to lighten the load, lighten the volume, drop down to 3 sets instead of 4. So that's pretty normal in, everyone's lifting career. And continuing to blindly pound yourself into the gym floor, force feeding, stagnating, and painful lifts is not a smart plan. And skipping the lifts altogether is no better either, as you never truly identify and strengthen the weak link that is causing the problems in the first place. But what if there was a method that would allow you to hit the reset button on the lift, allowing you to improve your technique while training it without chronic aches and pains, all while keeping the bar or movement exactly the same? This is where reactive neuromuscular training, also known as RNT, kicks in. And it's one of the most powerful methods in the industry for fixing faulty movements while continuing to train the big lifts hard and heavy simultaneously. So you guys, I'm going to come to a very brief break right now. And when we come back, more on the reactive neuromuscular training.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast. So, like I said, reactive neuromuscular training, RNT, it has become one of the most powerful methods in the industry for fixing faulty movement while continuing to train the big lifts hard and heavy simultaneously. This is a great method for those who have hit a plateau in those major big compound lifts, or who are starting to experience some type of ugly pain while doing these lifts. With the use of just a resistance band attached to the barbell or your body, you can add in the best external training cue for all of the major compound lifts you've ever used before to spark the much needed reset you've been seeking for longer than you'd like to admit. And here's exactly how it works, y'all. It's all you need is a resistance band. So let's get into what exactly is reactive neuromuscular training. Reactive neuromuscular training, also known as RNT. I'll be switching between both of those terms, you guys, throughout today's episode, so don't get confused. I mean the same thing. So RNT is a corrective strategy that has been successfully implemented into both training and rehabilitation programming for the improvement of movement patterning and quality. Though the science of neuromuscular and intramuscular coordination, in which the RNT method is dependent on, is an extremely deep theoretical area, the basis of how the RNT method actually works to quickly and effectively improve dysfunctional and or painful movement patterns, it's actually quite simple. So don't feel like we're in a classroom right now. I mean, we're going to dumb it down really quick, and you're going to really understand and comprehend how exactly this method works. When a dysfunctional or compensated pattern arises during a movement, a band, a resistance band, can be utilized on an area of the body in order to pull that area into a further and more marked dysfunctional pattern. By feed the dysfunction during the execution of the movement pattern, the body supercompensates to correct out of the dysfunction, utilizing active stability and activation of segments that were previously lagging. The reactivation of key stabilizers of any foundational movement pattern has the power to not only clean up movement pattern quality in an efficient manner, but also motor learning of properly executed movements to be habituated and transferred into more challenging movement variations in the not so distant future training plan. And you can display strength and power that you can first stabilize and control. As a staple in the functional movement system's corrective exercise programming, I first learned about this powerful technique from Greg Cook and Dr. Greg Rose more than a decade ago. After having a great amount of success with the RNT method for restoring sound movement quality, I did notice one major limitation to this method, and it's the necessity for a coach or rehab pro to position and hold the band during the correction of a movement pattern. So that is the biggest downfall of the reactive neuromuscular training method, that you do need a coach or a rehab pro to assist you by holding the band in the correct position. So you can't actually do or implement the RNT method on your own. While individualized attention is sometimes needed to correct faulty movements, it's not practical for the average lifter to have a training partner or coach spot every lift with the use of this band, right? Because once that average lifter or that lifter in general, they start to get accustomed with having a spotter there, and that's not the point, right? You don't want to depend on a body whenever you're doing your lifts. After reviewing options to create more self-sufficiency for athletes using the RNT method, I started implementing into bigger and heavier lifts during strength and performance training with the band attached to an immovable object like a squat rack with great success. As load and intensity is increased, movement capacity has a tendency to decrease, reducing a movement's effectiveness and training. That's why utilizing the RNT method with the big barbell lifts like the squat, bench press, and deadlift, in addition to some other staple compound movements, provides a huge opportunity to improve movement quality and reducing pain patterns while still being able to train the big lifts meaningfully and correctly. So, here's how to set up and execute the RNT method for 7 staple movements that should be the cornerstone of any strength and conditioning program. So listen up, y'all. We're going to begin talking about the RNT method in the squat. The biggest mistake many lifters make in the squat pattern is not placing enough emphasis on the posterior chain musculature of the lower body, aka mainly the hamstrings and the glutes, during this movement. Instead, many lifters lose foundational stability and inherently fall forward with the more anterior chain dominant squat pattern, which is less efficient and effective for building a strong and authentic squat pattern. And I see this way too often with clients and members of the gym that I work at, is many of them are quad dominant. Many of them have told me they're quad dominant. So as they prepare to lower down into their squat, a lot of times that's when you start to see their chest collapse forward. You know, they're not really dropping those hips. They're not really breaking parallel. And that's because they are not placing enough emphasis on the posterior chain. Again, mainly the hamstrings and glutes. By utilizing the RNT method for the barbell squat, we can ensure that pre-tension and positional stability is achieved at the posterior chain muscles before the first rep even starts its descent. Pulling back against the band will improve the feel, mechanics, and loading of the glutes and hamstrings, leading this movement pattern while maintaining constant stability and tension throughout all phases of the squat. So here's exactly step by step the setup and execution of the RNT barbell back squat. So first, you're going to want to attach 2 light bands to either side of the squat rack. Then and what I mean by the resistance band, guys, I should have clarified in the beginning of the episode. I mean like the long CrossFit-like bands, like the huge loop bands, not the mini bands or the booty bands. Those aren't going to work for the RNT method. I'm talking about the long bands, that you typically see people do pull-ups with, assisted pull-ups with, chin-ups. So, sorry, I should have clarified that in the very beginning. So like I just said, to set up for the RNT barbell back squat, you're going to want to attach 2 light bands to either side of the squat rack. Then loop the bands around the collar of both sides of the barbell. Then unrack the barbell, walking back slowly and under control. Again, there's going to be a lot of tension here, so stay in control of the weight. Pre-tension the shoulders, hips, and core against the band tension. Execute the eccentric and concentric phases of the squat for 8 reps, okay, for like 10 reps. Control the barbell back into the rack. And that's basically how you do the setup and execution of the RNT barbell back squat. I really like this method already, especially for all of my squat lovers out there. I think this is a really good method to use, even if you're not experiencing any pain or even if you're not in a plateau. This is a good way to switch things up in your exercise regimen, to test out your body in a different way, challenge it neuromuscular, in a neuromuscular way. And I definitely would like to try this, but again, I would need someone, a coach there kind of guiding me through it, since, I haven't tried the RNT barbell back squat, but it definitely seems effective. I understand how it can be very effective. And you guys, we're going to cut into a very short break right now. And when we come back, we're going to be discussing the RNT method in a bench press.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast. So we just got done wrapping up about the RNT barbell back squat and the setup and execution for utilizing the Reactive Neuromuscular Training Method in a barbell back squat. So now moving on, we're going to be discussing the Reactive Neuromuscular Training Method in a bench press. When pressing big numbers while simultaneously maintaining shoulder health in the process, you are truly only as strong in the press as your upper back is stable during this cornerstone upper body lift. Many lifters that have plateaued in their bench press or have battled against painful and achy shoulders while trying to progress simply haven't mastered the art of upper back, lat, and scapular stability that is an absolute requisite to pain-free pressing. I feel like a lot of times with these barbell bench presses, people heavily rely on just their pecs, and maybe their triceps. And there's a lot more that goes into effectively moving through a full range in a bench press. It's how, just stated, shoulders, upper back, lats, scapular stability. All of that is so important in this major lift. By using the RNT method for the bench press, we can tap into the stabilizing potential of the lats and upper back to create and maintain optimal amounts of stability to create a more favorable pressing position for the shoulders to work from while mitigating joint and non-contractile tissue stresses as well. So let's review the setup and execution for the RNT barbell bench press. So for this one, you're going to want to attach one light band to the midline of the top crossbar of the squat rack. Then loop the band around the midline of the barbell. Unrack the barbell slowly and under control. And pre-tension the lats and upper back actively against the band tension. And then execute the eccentric and concentric phases of the bench press for X amount of reps, for like 10 amount of reps. And then control the barbell back into the rack. So again, highly effective. I can see how the RNT method is a very favorable method for many lifters. And I really want to know if you guys are going to try this. Let me know in the comments so far how the RNT method is sounding for you in terms of utilizing it for your bench presses and squats. So next, we're going to be talking about the RNT method in a deadlift. Similar to the bench press, upper back and core stiffness is an absolute requisite to a strong deadlift pattern. The main upper body contributor to this packing of the spine and achievement of the lifter's wedge is the lats and upper back, presenting as the broadest attaching muscle in the body, playing a key role in the linkage of shoulders to both the torso and hip group. By utilizing the RNT method for the deadlift, we're able to kick on active engagement of the lats, pulling back against the band to help stabilize the shoulders, core, and hips simultaneously throughout this entire movement. This method will produce better core stiffness, more optimal back engagement, and a more natural hinge position for pulling during any hip hinge based movement. So here's the setup and execution for the RNT barbell deadlift. Attach a light band to the bottom column of the power rack. Loop the band around the midline of the barbell. Ensure that you are facing the rack with the band in front of you. Grab the barbell and roll it towards you against the band tension. Achieve a starting position with the bar tight to the body. Pre-tension the lats and upper back against the band tension, and then drive up the barbell, locking out with maximal tension at the back, and then control the eccentric lowering portion of the lift and repeat for whatever amount of reps you're planning on doing, and then control the barbell back down and in front of you after the set. So I really like this idea for the method, the RNT method in a deadlift, because again, the RNT method in a deadlift will be able to kick on the active engagement of the lats, pulling back against the band to help stabilize the shoulder and core and your hips, which I think that's a big issue for many lifters in their deadlift, is that they're not, packing the shoulders, engaging those lats. I feel like a lot of times people end up getting the roundness. They create that roundness in the spine in this lift because, one, the barbell's not close enough to their shins, and two, they're not packing their shoulders and not actively engaging their lats. And that's really what helps, pull the bar straight up. It's not, obviously it is hamstrings and your glutes, but it's also a lot of back. So I like how the RNT method in the deadlift really emphasizes that. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the RNT method overhead press. The overhead press is one of the most advanced lifts in the iron game due to its immense amount of requisite for both mobility and stability being displayed simultaneously under load. But many who struggle with pressing overhead with sound mechanics are in need of more shoulder mobility, but rather better shoulder stability patterns that unlock the inherent mobility that the true shoulder joint, the glenohumeral joint, naturally has. By utilizing the RNT method for the overhead press, we can teach and repattern the upper back and lats to act as strong postural stabilizers for the vertical pressing while unlocking power and strength potential in this plane of action. Though there could be many locations of dysfunction and instability during this full body lift, improving the lat stability function will go a long way when looking to clean up this lift. So again, let's go through the setup and execution for the RNT barbell overhead press. So attach one light band to the midline of the top crossbar of the squat rack. Loop the band around the midline of the barbell. Ensure that you're facing forward with the band in front of you. Unrack the barbell and step back slowly and under control. Pre-tension the lats and upper back actively against the band tension. Ensure lower body, hip, and core stability with bracing before lift. So suck in those abs, right? Think belly button to spine. Execute the concentric and eccentric phases of the press for X amount of reps. And then control the barbell back into the rack. Again, amazing what the RNT method and the overhead press can do. Again, it is re-patterning the upper back and legs to act as strong postural stabilizers for the vertical press while unlocking power and strength potential in this plane of action. If you have correctly and effectively performed this specific exercise, the overhead press, then you understand why stability in those lats are important. If you have weak lats, that barbell is going to come crashing down and possibly push you back. And the lats on the eccentric phase and the lowering phase of that overhead press, you literally feel your lats in there engaging and stabilizing the weight. So it's, again, really amazing. I'm actually just I'm pleasantly surprised by this method and how much just positioning what a resistance band and positioning it correctly can do in terms of neuromuscularly challenging your muscle groups in a different way, right? It's not always, when it comes to progressively overloading and trying to challenge your body and, make it grow or whatever your goal may be, it's not always by loading weight, right? I feel like that's the typical impression we get when it comes to we have to build muscle or like we want to get strong is we need to pack on the weight, but that's not necessarily true. There are other ways to get strong. There are other ways to progressively overload. There are other ways to get strong without loading and packing on the weight, especially with incorrect form, okay? Drop the ego, work on moving optimally through a full range of motion, through every plane of motion, moving dynamically, you feel me? So, you guys, we're going to cut into another very brief break right now. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about the RNT method in a lunge. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hey guys, and welcome back to GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast. I hope you guys are all taking notes of everything that we've been talking about. I hope this is a method that you are truly going to use, hopefully some of you, and that find it interesting. So like I said, we're going to now be diving into the RNT method in a lunge. So similar to the squat pattern, the lunge and its many variations tend to have a common executional fault of being far too anterior chain dominant, right? And I see this all the time, or a lot of times in my classes that I teach, is that in those lunge patterns, everyone tends, or not everyone, I shouldn't generalize, right? But a lot of folks tend to have their weight shifted to their toes and, not focusing on the step back and utilizing the glutes and hammies, but more quad and chest falling forward. So very anterior chain dominant. The power and potential of getting the most out of single leg work depends on the ability of the individual to utilize their posterior chain for strength and stability during single leg activities. The posterior chain dominant skill set is one that is oftentimes forgotten in terms of motor patterning, hence why the RNT lunge is such a powerful tool in teaching and fixing faulty lunge patterns. By kicking on the glutes and hamstrings to pull back against the band, posterior chain will become a primary stability group of single leg lifts, exactly the way that the body was biomechanically designed to function for optimal strength, stability, and performance. Okay? So guys, I hope you're listening, because I think I'm going to be very truthful here. In my classes, the ones who tend to anteriorly fall forward in their squats and their lunges are men. And I think it's because men, tend to negate their posterior chain. They tend to not pay attention to their booty, their glutes, their hammies, which is why many of them don't have a really strong posterior chain compared to a lot of other women, who, right now the whole craze is working out on our lower body, specifically our glutes. And I think that's why, that's just been my observation, right? Of course, I'm not trying to generalize and say every dude is built this way. No, but I think that society has put exercises into gender categories, which is like so stupid, because these exercises are not gender based. They are literally made for anyone and everyone. It doesn't matter what you identify as, you feel me? Everybody needs to have a strong posterior chain. Okay, this literally helps you walk, run, go up the stairs. So we all need to be working on our glutes and hamstrings a little more. So with that being said, let's get into the setup and execution of the RNT barbell reverse lunge. So you're going to attach 2 light bands to either side of the squat rack. Loop the bands around the collar of both sides of the barbell. Unrack the barbell, walking back slowly and under control. Pre-tension the shoulders, hips, and core against the band tension. Step back into a reverse lunge and return to starting position. And allow for a slight static forward torso angle to target the glutes and hamstrings. And then execute the step back and return to neutral for X amount of reps. And then control the barbell back into the rack. Pretty amazing, honestly. I hope you guys are amazed by this. Next, let's discuss the RNT method row. So the horizontal pull, aka the row, is one of the most pivotal movement patterns to build a bulletproof upper back and pain-free shoulders. But here's the kicker, y'all. It's only as effective as its level of execution. And as we've all seen, the row is one of the single most butchered movements in the gym. The row has a distinct advantage over vertical pulling variations like the traditional pull-up due to allowing the shoulder to avoid heavy loaded internal rotation moments and maintaining a better and more neutral alignment. These advantages are thrown out the window as soon as elbows flare and shoulders crank into internal rotation. That's why the RNT method for the row pattern is an extremely powerful tool that will enhance the arcing moment of the row to keep the shoulders more neutral and the lats and upper back more engaged while decreasing front-sided shoulder stress. So here is the setup and execution for the RNT bent over barbell row. You're going to first want to attach a light band to the bottom column of the power rack. Then loop the band around the midline of the barbell and ensure that you are facing the rack with the band in front of you. Grab the barbell and roll it towards you against the band tension. Achieve a starting position with the bar tight to the body. And then pre-tension the lats and upper back against the band tension. Drive up the barbell, locking out with maximal tension at the back. Slowly hinge your hips back to achieve a stabilized bent over position. And then execute the bent over row from this position against weight and band tension. And control the eccentric lowering portion of the lift and repeat for X amount of reps. And then return to a neutral position and control the barbell back down and in front of you after the set. So again, this is so powerful, so great. Again, especially the RNT method, helping one of the single most butcher movements in the gym. It's going to help enhance the arcing moment of the row to keep the shoulders more neutral, right? Not rounded. And then we have the RNT method pull up, okay? So for this one, contrary to popular belief, the pull-up is not an upper body exercise, but rather a full body movement that needs to link the upper body to the lower body through a strong and stable core unit. Now, you guys, it took me quite some time to understand this concept because your girl struggles with pull-ups, chin-ups, all right? Like, they are extremely challenging for me, and I thought it was all in your lats, right? Like, I was like, I went through a phase where I was like so dedicated to my lats, worked on them twice a week, a whole bunch of back exercise to like make my lats stronger because I'm like, I want to be able to do a pull-up. Not realizing that it has a lot to do with maintaining a stable core and that core connecting the upper and lower extremities. And I've noticed that in my pull-ups, my legs tend to swing forward, and that's due to lack of core stability. So, one of the most common faults during the pull-up is allowing the core to go passive, the spine to extend, and the pelvis to dump into an anterior pelvic tilted position, which is exactly what I just told you guys. That's exactly what I do in this lift. And this is essentially disintegrating the lower body from the upper body in the process when those legs swing forward and you're extending the spine and the pelvis, dumps into an anterior pelvic tilted position. using the RNT band to cue the anterior core and hips to achieve and maintain proper stability and engagement throughout the vertical pull. We can reduce unwanted shoulder and lower back stress that is commonly associated with poorly executed pull-ups and truly make the vertical pull demanding full body movement once again. So you guys, again, let's get into the setup and execution of the RNT pull-up. First, you're going to want to attach a light band to the handle of a heavy dumbbell. And the dumbbell will be positioned on the floor approximately 2 feet behind the pull-up bar. Position the loop band around your ankles with the band positioned behind the body. Then grab onto the pull-up bar with your hands while keeping the band around the ankles. And then bring your legs into a hollow body position with knees extended, hips slightly flexed, and ankles in a neutral position. Ensure tension is placed on the band and there is no slack in the system. So no slacking. You don't want the band to, be loose. Execute the concentric and eccentric phases of the pull-up for X amount of reps. And then return the feet safely to the ground and remove the band from the ankles. Now for this one, again, like I mentioned in the very beginning of today's episode, the biggest downfall with the RNT method is that in some of these exercises, you're going to need a coach or a rehab pro to physically be there to help you. And the RNT pull-up is one of those. You can't really do a RNT pull-up by yourself. Since the band is looped around your ankles and you're pulling up, that band can easily just slip through the ankles. So you're going to need a professional that'll hold it together, physically hold it down, okay? So before I move on to the next segment here, I kind of want to give you guys some background on Dr. John Rusin. This is his article about the Reactive Neuromuscular Training Method. So Dr. John Rusin is an internationally recognized coach, physical therapist, speaker, and sports and performance expert. Dr. John has coached some of the world's most elite athletes, including multiple gold medalist Olympians, NFL All-Pros, MLB All-Stars, professional bodybuilders, world record holding powerlifters, national level Olympic lifters, and all-world Ironman triathletes. He is the leading pioneer in the fitness and sports performance industries and intelligent, pain-free performance programming that achieves world-class results while preventing injuries in the process. Okay, that's what we all like to see and hear. We want to move dynamically, pain-free. Dr. John's methods are showcased in his 12-week FHT program that combines the best from athletic performance, training, powerlifting, bodybuilding, and preventative therapy to produce world-class results without pain and injuries. So this is a little bit of corrective exercise to me. In a nutshell, that is what the RNT, Reactive Neuromuscular Training Method is. It's a umbrella. It's a branch of the corrective exercise, umbrella. So you guys, I'm going to come to a very brief break right now. And when we come back, more here at the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hey guys, and welcome back to GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast. So for this final segment of today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to fix your goblet squats using the RNT method, the Reactive Neuromuscular Training Method. And I specifically chose goblet squats because, again, this is another staple in many exercise routines. And I think it's an exercise that a lot of people struggle with. You know, again, a lot of people tend to be more focused on the anterior chain rather than the posterior chain development. And as a result, that's when people's chest starts collapsing forward in this specific exercise, or their knees cave in, or their weight shifts forward to their toes. So if you want to fix your squat mechanics, try incorporating reactive neuromuscular training into your goblet squats. And like I said, the goblet squat is one of the most simple yet effective exercises for grooving proper squat technique and lower body mechanics. Unfortunately, many individuals have a tendency to perform them incorrectly, thereby reinforcing dysfunction and faulty activation patterns into their central nervous system that can negatively impact all other lower body movements. Doesn't sound too great, right? Ironically, the goblet squat is frequently used as a corrective movement for the squat pattern. However, the opposite often occurs due to a variety of movement aberrations. A very common issue many athletes, including advanced lifters, run into during a goblet squats is neglecting to sit back into their hips and allowing excessive anterior knee drift to occur. While the goblet squat does involve a slightly more upright and quad dominant position than many other squats, it's still just as critical that the lifter sits back into their heels, hips, and glutes, right? You don't want it all to be falling forward. This is accomplished by incorporating a very slight hip hinge throughout without letting the chest actually tilt forward. By performing goblet squats with RNT resistance and band tension that's attempting to drive your hips, knees, and lower body in the anterior direction, you're essentially feeding this dysfunction. As a result, the lifter is required to sit back into their heels and hips to resist these forces, thereby eliminating the common anterior knee drift and over quad dominant positions. This variation also helps eliminate the all too common problem of bending over at the waist excessively, again, chest tilting over, rather than sitting straight down. That's because the lifter can use the band resistance to lean slightly against, thereby reinforcing more vertical force vectors. There is also an excellent variation for any individual with knee issues or low back problems, as the horizontal band resistance helps alleviate pressure off both of these areas. So let's get into some of the lateral variations. If an individual tends to favor one leg, this same RNT method can be used to correct this. Simply have them face laterally from the anchor point of the band so that the tension is coming from the side rather than the front. For instance, if an individual leans more so into their right leg when squatting, they could set up so that the band is looped around the left side of their hip and pulling them to the right. Force vector is in the right side direction. To resist being pulled excessively to the right, the side they tend to favor, they'll be required to shift more tension to the left leg to create a square and symmetrical squat position. And here's an interesting side note. If you look closely, you'll notice a very slight hitch at the beginning of the squat, right as he's beginning his eccentric descent. While a portion of this is a result of resisting the anterior horizontal forces produced from the band, some of this was also a result of him overhinging the hips, which actually creates excessive strain on the low back and hips. I've done this before. I think I still have an issue with overhinging at the hips, which is why I tend to I think that's why how I said I'm feeling my low back today. This occurred largely because Matt's primary problem in the past on squats was that he was too knee dominant and relied excessively on his quads. As a result of addressing this compensation, he overcorrected the issue. Unfortunately, this can create its own set of issues. However, we've recently addressed this subtle flaw by ingraining the notion that the hips and knees must bend simultaneously with natural, not excessive hip hinge. We did this by slowing his squat down and using more controlled eccentric isometrics as well as video analysis. So what's the take-home message? Don't overcorrect a movement aberration. Correct and cue it to the point that the movement becomes optimal, not extreme. Don't correct it to the extent that you develop dysfunction and aberrations in the opposite direction of the prior fall. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you fix your goblet squats using the RNT method, the Reactive Neuromuscular Training Method. So you guys, I really hope you enjoyed today's talk on how to fix your big lifts fast with the RNT method, but not just only to fix them. This is also going to help you progressively overload. It's another way to progressively overload and challenge your body, your muscles, especially for my lifters out there, or just anyone who's focusing on getting stronger right now, or who's like wanting to grow a specific body part. Utilize the RNT method. Again, you don't always need to pack on extra weight in order to challenge your muscles. You can challenge them in other ways, like the Reactive Neuromuscular Training Method. If you like today's episode, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff, because that tremendously helps the show. And I'll catch you guys here for the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.